So when I was 11 years old, I had begun the process of having to move from house to house a lot. And because that was happening at such a young age for me, the thing that I was afraid of the most was I thought I was going to forget where it was I came from, kind of like my hometown. So one night my mom presented me with this Olympus camera that I still have today. And she told me to just take pictures of everything in sight so that I will always have the memories and I'll never have to forget. So that's pretty much exactly what I did, only I found it in my nature to always take scenic pictures. So today I want to introduce to you the art of landscape photography. For about 14 years now, I have passionately studied and immersed myself in learning about photography. For 5 years, I was doing wedding photography and then an additional year in portrait photography. The years of experience have only moved me closer to landscape. So everyone here is like a photographer in one form or another, and I think Instagram is a great example of that. And whether it's snapping a picture of a person or a mountaintop, we can all relate to photography. So today I'm going to be discussing the history, the personal expression, and America's #1 person in landscape photography. So the history of photography is traced back to the 18th century, and prior to this time, landscape photography was used the same principles as artists did, or painters, and it was to create a work of art, and they painted landscape more of like a backdrop to all of their subjects. However, in the latter part of the century, artists like John Constable and William Turner started romanticizing the environment by using these principles in their paintings. The first photographic movement was born a couple of years after Constable and Turner, and it was known as pictorial photography. And that's just a type of photography that was used to imitate paintings and drawings. And at this time, technology for photography was still in a very primitive stage, and photographers felt that their lenses were recording too much detail. So they would use this technique to soften and manipulate all of their images. And their goal of doing this was to create a photograph that looked like a painting. More like how the picture I have up here is a really good example of an image that was manipulated, that looks like a painting, but it was really just a photograph. And then by 1889, Dr. Peter Henry Emerson started promoting naturalism, and he believed in stopping these emulating techniques in painting and start treating photography as an independent art form. In a 2009 article that was quoted, Expressions of Landscape Photography, Rhonda Callow quotes Emerson, who says that people should strive to communicate something personal through their work. They should look at the environment for inspiration. In the early 20th century, painters continued to embrace the landscape. As photography gained acceptance as an art form, artists would create interpretations of the land through formal compositions of cropped views of landscape. And composition is just the way that you structure your subject in your image frame. And today the landscape continues to be a subject artists turn to when contemplating the ways to relate to places we live and the impact as we as humans have on the land. So to give you just kind of a brief history of the cameras that I have up here, just starting from my oldest camera, it's the Beacon 2 camera, and it was manufactured from approximately 1947 to 1955. Over here is the 620 Folding Brownie, and it was introduced in 1948 and discontinued in 1954. My camera right over here, that one was starting in 1976 and only lasted for about 10 years. But it was the first 35mm camera that made SRL photography available to beginners and amateurs at a really cheap price. And SRL photography is just single lens reflex, which means it was just a camera that used a prism or a mirror system so that whatever the photographer was seeing through the lens, it would be captured through their naked eye. My camera all the way down there at the end is my Canon EOS Rebel, and it's a 35mm camera system as well. And it was introduced in 1987, and it's still in production today. So the world is full of beautiful places, and it's through photography that we can experience the places that we've never seen before. The aim of landscape photography is to express the emotion or mood in a landscape at a particular point in time. With different hues of nature, scenic images are more than just that. They are images that represent the photographer's emotion, idea, or concept. Landscape photography uses light, design, and symbolic references as a way to communicate, like an example that I have right up here, how the light is beaming on the flags that I got right here. Today, the camera is seen as a tool for a photographer to record his or her personal emotion. A tool which can transform the familiar to the exotic or the real to surreal. Just like an image I have down here is just a photograph, but it looks more surreal because it also kind of looks like a cartoon. It's also a way for photographers to explore their personal relationship with their environment and to interact and respond to the external stimuli. I have an example right here. We're camping in the environment, as well as my photo down here where there's people swimming in the water, as well as the light too. To be able to receive personal expression in a landscape image, as a photographer, you need to know what kind of camera to use to take the landscape with. If you're using just kind of like a standard lens, which is a 50mm, like the small lens right here, you'll realize that you can't really get much of a panoramic view with it, so it's not a great camera to use for landscape. On the other hand, the digital 35mm lens is a wide-angle lens, and this is probably the #1 camera to use for landscape because you get more of a panoramic view when you're taking the picture. America's greatest landscape photographer, Ansel Adams, tells us that I hope that my work will encourage self-expression in others and stimulate the search for beauty and creative excitement in the great world around us. Born in 1902 and dying in 1984, Ansel Adams remains the most beloved photographer in the United States, with the popularity of his work only increasing since his death. Ansel Adams grew up being a very rebellious child. It wasn't until 1916, when he received his very first camera, that he was proven to be a very talented photographer. Throughout the 1920s, he worked as a custodian in the Sierra Lodge in Yosemite National Park, where he created impressive landscape photographs. The most powerful and original work during his career came from his efforts of creating visual expression through his experiences in the Sierra. While Adams had also loved playing the piano, in 1930 he put all aside and he devoted his life to photography. So up here, my last two pictures on the side, I just have an example of the Yosemite Falls that I took in 2007 compared to the one below, which was in 1945 by Ansel Adams himself. Most of Adams' work as a photographer was completed by 1950, and only a handful of important pictures that he made during the last half of his adult life. In 1980, Adams was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Jimmy Carter. And acknowledging Adams' years of work as both a photographer and environmentalist, the president's citation was put into a 2008 magazine article, Photographers of the Day, saying that it is through Adams' foresight and fortitude that so much of America had been saved for future Americans. So a year ago, I actually went and I visited the Ansel Adams Gallery located in Yosemite National Park. And there I was told that a lot of his original works are widely collected, and today they run anywhere between $8,000 to $50,000 to buy. So today I have the privilege of being able to share with you the history, the personal expression, and the Ansel Adams of landscape photography. And I find myself very lucky and proud to be able to explore this beautiful art, and I hope all of you will be able to have that kind of opportunity as well.
All right, so Ian, what did you think?
I liked the opening. It was very personal, and some of us could relate to it. And so the hook was very good. There was I'm not sure if I heard a lot of transitions. It kind of went from one to the next almost. But it wasn't so much that it was just, and the next thing is, it kind of flowed really well. I liked how you touched on the different images, but you didn't spend a minute per image talking